This is Surrogacy Unwrapped. Today's episode, communication within a surrogacy journey.
Hello everyone who is joining us. We are here for tonight's episode of Surrogacy Unwrapped. My name is Kristie. I'm the surrogate coordinator with Family Choice Surrogacy. I am joined by Mariah Duck, and she is our case manager. And tonight we are going to be talking about communication in the surrogacy journey. So welcome back, and again, thank you for joining us. So, communication can either make or break a journey here. And so I think it's something that we should definitely talk about. I think, most people would agree that communication in any form and capacity of a relationship is super important. And it makes zero bit of difference that this is a surrogacy relationship. It matters, and it matters a ton. And so we want to talk about how to have a successful communication boundary set up, etc., with your intended parents, with your agency, with anybody who is related to your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Every journey has its own expectations, and they have their own things that they want ideally out of a journey. And I think that a lot of times people come into these things with kind of unsaid expectations, and if they're never said out loud, then the process and the journey can kind of go a little bit rocky if you're expecting one thing and then that doesn't happen and the other party had no idea. So we really want to create the space where we talk openly and respectfully, and then that way everybody feels heard and supported, and the relationships just go a lot smoother.
Yeah, and I think just to elaborate on that, there are a lot of complexities. This is a very intimate journey, and a lot of emotions are involved, and there's just a lot of moving pieces and parts and people who are going to be involved in it. And so being able to communicate clearly and effectively to all parts is going to really make a difference in your journey, and to help things not get just misunderstood. A lot of communication these days especially happens over, text, and that can oftentimes go one direction when it meant to go the other. And so we just want to try and help navigate those waters a little bit.
I think text is so hard because people read things in tones, whether they realize it or not. They read it with a tone of voice that is made up in their head, and it can be completely different than the tone of voice that the text was sent in.
Am I the only one who also gives tones to emojis?
Oh,
I mean, does the thumbs up not scream sarcasm to you, or is that just me?
This conversation with my best friend the other day. She texted me a thumbs up, and I told her, I really need you to stop doing that because I think you're upset with me. And she was
literally, and I think that there's like half the world who thinks the thumbs up, like all is good, and then there's the other half, us, who think that like that's a big F you.
Like, the correct half. I'm just saying.
I think so too, but I was trying not to go there. So Mariah, what advice do you have for surrogates and intended parents when it comes to effectively communicating with each other? Or what do you think is good communication between your surrogate and your intended parents?
So good communication. This is a difficult question because everyone has a different idea of what they think that good communication is. I think it's really funny, how one of the biggest pieces of advice that we get or hear in surrogacy is you need to have good communication. Make sure strong communication, but no one really ever elaborates on that. So really, I want, basically to outline what we are saying if it were a step-by-step direction of good communication. So really talking about how often you want to check in. How often do you want to hear from your surrogate? How often as a surrogate are you okay with being, checked in on? What method do you prefer? Is a text the best to get you? Is the call the best to get you? Is FaceTime what feels comfortable to you? I have friends that won't even answer a phone call. If their phone rings, they'll toss it across the room. So, if that's your not preferred communication method, then that just needs to be stated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, of course, respecting boundaries within those communication kind of discussions. Hey, after 8 p.m., I'm putting my kids to bed, and then I have a wind down. I try not to look at my phone. If you text me after 8, I'll just get back to you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of letting that be clear if you have anything like that.
And that
Um,
would go a long way. Like if I knew that you had a boundary that after 8 o'clock you have your phone put away, if I'm texting you and you don't respond back to me, I could take that as a tone or take that personal because you're not getting back to me promptly and you have no feelings like ill feelings towards me. You just have set a personal boundary of turning off electronics, and that tiny bit of information and communication can make a huge impact on having a more clearer expectation and just better communication style between all the parties involved. Do you guys talk about this during your match meeting of boundaries of communication when you have your match?
yes, it's something that we ask in our match questionnaire. It will be brought up in match meetings, kind of what feels okay. Now, here's my biggest pet peeve as your case manager is when everybody says, whatever feels good. We're
Yeah.
okay. We're okay with anything. Are you sure? Because if your surrogate doesn't text you one time throughout the entire journey, are you sure you're okay with that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you're not okay with anything. And it's okay to not be okay with anything. It's okay as a surrogate to say, hey, I am not good if you text me 5 times a day. I
Mm-hmm.
will become overwhelmed. It will be too much. So it's okay to kind of state those things that are your boundaries and what you
Yeah,
like and can manage.
definitely.
Yeah. And then, of course, using kindness. I think a big one that I'm actually working on myself as an individual, but I think can go a long way in a surrogacy journey is to always assume the best intentions.
Mm.
If somebody says something and they kind of snap at you, or they say something and it comes off a little funny, I'm personally trying to go back to, is this how this person usually acts? Do they
Yeah,
usually treat me this way? Are they maybe having a hard day? Is maybe stressful? Things like that.
yeah.
Um, do you
One
have that?
I do. So I have like this is one of my favorite stories that I kind of talk to with surrogates when we are discussing some of their match preferences when they're in the middle of screening with me. When it comes to just kind of being aware of again like your tone and your message and your intent behind what you were saying or what you aren't saying by not saying something at all. Um, we once had a surrogate and she was a very direct individual, very independent, very direct, sweet as can be, the nicest woman. But she just was a very short responder, and that was her method of communication. Nothing wrong with it. And then we had intended parents who were a lot more communicative and wanted to know like everything, all the details. There was no detail too small that they did not want to know and hear about. My kind of people. And everything was going great in the journey. They were getting along just well, but this little bit of just static in this communication process where they weren't getting enough, she felt like maybe she was getting a little bit too much.
Mhm.
We kind of had to figure out how do we navigate this. And Leah and I, this is before Mariah joined us, we're like, man, I don't want to hurt her feelings. Like we knew this going in, we knew this was her communication style, we knew this was their communication style, but everything else was great. And so we're like, we have to talk to her. Like they just need a little bit more. And so we approached her. We're like, we're so sorry to bring this up. And is there any way? She's like, wait a minute. I think I know what's going on here. And we're like, you do? And she goes, I'm not being fluffy enough with my words, am I? And we're like, oh my gosh, yes, yes. And she's like, I get this at my job all the time. Like, I'll get emails, like you could fluff it up a little bit. And she's like, I know, it's a like a character flaw of mine. Like, I'm just so direct, and that's just my tone and style. She's like, I don't mind. I don't mind adding some extra words if that helps them feel like more connection. And we're like, oh my gosh, well, that was way easier than we thought it was going to be.
That's hilarious. I love that. That's
But I love
self-aware.
having that self-awareness. Like, be self-aware of what you need, what you bring to the table, and how you think this can all come together in your journey. Because you're a team, and we want y'all to be a team. And you
Yes.
have a lot of time that you got to navigate through. Most journeys are 12 to 18 months, so we got to figure this out.
And I think it's important to know that most journeys are 12 to 18 months, but most of the time they're with strangers that you don't know their communication styles. You don't know how they normally handle kind of tough situations, tough times. There is the likelihood that you will be maybe going through some rough patches together or some frustrating times. And all of a sudden you're doing it with these people that you've never kind of seen, with your spouse or your parent. You kind of know their communication styles, you know what happens when they're upset, you know how to kind of
Yes.
navigate that. These are strangers, you don't know how to do that. So this is something to take into consideration. And if you're having a hard time, pull in your mental health professional. There are resources.
And that leads me to my next question. Like, how do you feel that the agency fits into the communication during the journey, especially between the IPs and GC? Like, I did just give an example of how we stepped in to try and get those two to come closer together and have a better style of communication. But what would you elaborate on that topic?
Yeah, so we act, more as a bridge. We're there to kind of help whenever there are more difficult conversations that need to be have. Sometimes surrogates will come to us if there's something she's unsure or concerned to share, and not really doesn't really know how. Or intended parents, we've had intended parents before come to us and say, my mom just died and we are going to be dealing with this. We're going to be really, not as present, and we don't want her to think that's anything with her. We're just dealing, but like, how do we go about this? So
Yeah, that's a great example.
we really help to reframe the situation,
Mm-hmm.
clarify the situation, and then just make sure that things aren't getting lost in translation. Like I said, sometimes things are said one way and not meant that way. So kind of offering that other perspective, or sometimes we have insight to something else that they're going on behind the scenes on
Yeah.
parties.
One question that we recently started asking in my consultation with new surrogate applicants is, how do you handle and manage conflict or difficult situations? And specifically, I'm asking them, are you someone who wants time to think it over and then come back to the situation and discuss after you've had it a moment? Or are you someone who's like, no, I need to discuss this right away? Because having that piece of knowledge is critical, and being able to be like, okay, how can we help them bridge that gap and get through this situation effectively?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, that's a great question. Um, I don't know that everybody knows that about themselves.
Sure.
Sometimes people have no idea.
I feel like you don't learn it until you're married, and you're usually married to your opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time.
What would you say is important from the agency that we should be communicating to the intended parents and the surrogates, or how can we communicate as the agency effectively to both parties? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So um we do so many, in fact, this is something Leah and I have recently said, like, we have to work on this a little bit because we
Yeah.
do so many behind the scenes things. We have things that are actively going for every single case. Hey, she's 12 weeks. We need to start this process. Oh, actually, we need to get started on the birth planning because she's 30 weeks. Like, there are so many things that we're constantly working on, tracking, making sure her insurance claims are kind of being moved along the way that they should. Was insurance applied to her claims? I mean, the list is endless.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and these
those
things
things are
are,
so like, we do them all the time,
yeah,
that it doesn't feel probably very natural to, or like desired. Like, do they really want to know? But I think they do.
right. So, sometimes I'm like, man, I haven't talked to these intended parents in 3 weeks, and I've been working on their case every
Mm-hmm.
single day for 2 hours dealing with, an insurance claim or something of the sort. Um, so we try really hard whenever there is a bigger situation or things going on in the background to just send kind of casual update emails. Hey, nothing needed on your end, but this is what we're working on. If
Mm-hmm.
there's anything needed from you, we'll reach out. But just so you know, we're still here, we're still facilitating, we're still working on these things.
Do you
Um,
feel like in surrogacy, the saying like no news is good news? Like, do you kind of feel like maybe it doesn't always apply to surrogacy? Because sometimes when you're sitting in silence, that can be a lot too.
I think this varies greatly on what part of the process you're in.
Yeah.
If you're in matching, silence is deafening. It's
Mm-hmm.
super long, it's super frustrating. You're like, why? You want to know, has my profile been presented at all?
Mm-hmm.
How many surrogates are applying? Like, there's so many questions and ruminating,
Sure.
all you can focus on.
Yeah.
if your surrogate is pregnant and you guys are talking and you guys have a great relationship and things are flowing and you don't hear from your agency, you know, a lot of the times people are fine with that.
Yeah.
And I do have intended parents. This is something I like to ask in my intended parent consult is kind of what you like and prefer for communication. Do you want a weekly update? Do you want no updates? And kind of, you're going to hear my dog bark. I have the window covered, but she weaseled her head through the.
She found a way.
Yeah. So really just asking them kind of what communications they would like and if it's really important to them. I have found that my intended parents who want communication will be communicating with me anyways. So
Yeah,
I welcome, I love it. Please email me if you have questions. It's great. But a lot of times I send email updates and people are like, hey, thumbs up emoji.
Okay. So, as you all know, or maybe you don't know if you're new to this world, but there are going to be other providers besides your agency working on your case. So, I'm thinking about your legal team, your medical team, your escrow team. What could you say about communicating with those providers, Mariah?
Oh gosh. With your legal team, I think one of the most important things is to ask all the questions. You really need to read your contract. We have a great little reel about this. Please read your contract. You should know what's in your contract because almost every question I get asked on both sides is in the contract. And I don't mind answering it, but like these are things that I really want you to know because you agreed to them. I don't want it to come as a surprise when you ask me a question and I'm like, no, actually, that's not okay.
Yeah.
So with your attorneys, ask them questions, make sure you understand your contract. If there's verbiage in there that you don't understand, please ask them to clarify or why it's in there. That's really, really, really important.
Yeah, and do think like listen, communicate well with your attorneys. You know, like they're gonna be like getting things done, and make sure you're on the receiving end and being able to respond, so that process doesn't have to take any longer than it already does.
Yes. Yes. For your medical team, I would say, again, ask all the questions you have, make sure you fully understand. If you are in like before transfer, make sure you're very clear on medication protocol and when you're supposed to be taking meds and make sure you're following your meds and hey, I think I might have only a few injections left. I'm going to need a refill. Like these are things you need to be looking ahead towards. And then once you're pregnant, communicating with your doctor, making sure they understand the situation, asking them for kind of exceptions to policies for things like allowing intended parents to video conference in for, you know, scans or appointments or things like that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, during the birth, really making sure you ask a lot of questions and understand all of the policies surrounding it.
And then anything when it comes to escrow and communication.
Oh, escrow. Forgot about escrow. How could I forget about escrow? You know, escrow, depending on the company you're using, most people are using Seed Trust. It's kind of the standard company now, but there are a few other ones. Use their portals. Check your ledger, check your disbursements. If you're an intended parent, make sure that you understand why there's money coming out. A lot of the times, money will just kind of come out as long as the contract outlines that expense is to be covered. Just look at those and make sure you understand how much is in your account as an intended parent and make sure you put more money in if needed because a lot of the times it's like, oh, she has, you know, $20,000 more of base comp and there's only $18,000 in here. We need to fund more money into it. Which of course is something we would help with, but talking to us, talking to your escrow company, if you have questions about disbursements.
Don't communicate about money with each other. That just makes things weird.
No, not
Don't do that.
Leave that to attorneys. And I mean, you can absolutely those are all conversations that should happen in match. And you will, as an intended parent, will be presented with a benefits package. So you'll know exactly what the financial picture looks like to use that person as your surrogate before you enter into any kind of agreement with them. But after that conversation, finances, it can really, really
not a great communication.
Yeah. Totally.
That kind of leads into some mistakes, So, what are some of the standard, typical mistakes that come around the pitfalls of communication in this surrogacy process that you most commonly see?
Yeah. I would say assuming for sure. I'm assuming, she's not answering me because whatever assumption you make, or just a lot of assumptions, a
Yeah.
lot of jumping to conclusions. And I mean, I've had an intended parent before tell me, well, I saw a Facebook post and I know it was my surrogate, even though it was
Mhm.
anonymous. And I'm like, actually, you don't, that's a huge assumption.
Yeah.
And while it's hard and your mind is going, we can't
Hmm.
do those things.
It's
And
not
so
going to make the relationship any easier or better. Yeah.
no, for sure. So if you're having frustrations, bring them to us.
Yeah.
Let us help navigate them, but also give each other the benefit of the doubt, really.
Yeah.
Um, and then I would say let small things build up and build up and build up. If something's bothering you from the beginning and you're like, oh, I'll just let it go, and then it happens
Hmm.
again, like, oh, I'll just let it go, and then all of a sudden it happens again and you blow up.
Hmm.
Well, it was your responsibility to bring it up the first time it bothered you. And
Yeah.
whether that's bring it up to your agency and we can help it, or, however you need to navigate that. But um, I think, over communication maybe, or under communication. But for the most part, people get into a really good flow of
Yeah,
like
I agree. And I
how
think
they're,
in the beginning, you should give all parties should give grace because you're figuring it out. As long as you can establish boundaries and matching, give it a little bit of time to navigate. You're basically making a new friend,
Mhm.
and making new friends can be a little bit challenging as adults.
Yeah,
It's not as easy as it was in grade school, and so give it some time to get into that flow, that rhythm, and usually everybody just finds their sweet spot.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think something to keep in mind specifically for surrogates is that, intended parents, for the most part, have been through a lot to get to where they are right now. And wherever you are, and if you just matched, if you're at transfer, and sometimes there are unexpressed expectations, that the surrogate is like, oh, we're gonna have this amazing dinner and we're gonna be super close and have this adorable transfer moment, and then it might not happen. But guess what? That might be their third transfer with their second surrogate. Like, there are so many things that happen behind the scenes that they don't always share or don't feel comfortable talking about, and they can be very guarded, and we have to keep that in mind as a surrogate. Like, hey, it has been a hard path to get here,
Mhm.
and sometimes it can be really hard to let yourself get your hopes up. um, so, just again, giving grace, not
Don't,
assuming.
yeah, and sometimes I think it's great to always have these built up expectations either.
Yeah.
Because then you can kind of get let down, Like, I just really think you got to go in with a clear, clean slate and allow it to grow and foster its growth into what it's going to be, in that relationship. And I think that, especially back to what you said way back in the beginning, when surrogates and intended parents say, "Oh, we'll do whatever they want," or "We're
Mhm.
good with anything," um, you don't know what it's going to be yet, and you don't know what that relationship's going to grow into, and you just need to let it foster it and grow itself, and
Yeah.
water it and tend to it and love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And allow it to come to its relationship that it's meant to be.
Hmm.
Um, I think another like viewpoint, you kind of talked about a perspective of the intended parents, but I think another perspective to consider of the surrogate is she is potentially raising her younger family and maybe even working and doing their sporting events and whatever. Like, not only is she your surrogate, she could be doing a whole host of other things. And while she deeply cares about what she's doing and growing your child and keeping your child safe, she's also tending to her life of
Hmm.
whatever that brings. And so, just being mindful that, again, she may not answer you that exact second, but it
Hmm.
has nothing to do with her lack of care, or consideration. She just might be hung up at the moment,
Yeah.
and being able to talk effectively and openly to your intended parent and surrogate about those expectations and boundaries can go a long way.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a great point to remember, because it can be so easy to think like, oh, we're just, we're not important. And it's really hard, I think, when you're an intended parent to not, you're grasping for control. And
Yeah.
it's just really, really difficult sometimes to remember that, there's a whole life happening outside of
Mhm.
growing your baby. And, maybe she's driving and she doesn't want to answer the phone while she's
Yeah.
driving.
Try to be safe.
Yeah, she's being as safe as she can. And so,
Yes.
again, I think this really just leads back to giving people the benefit of the doubt and going back to the thing that caused you to match in the first place, that
Yeah.
feeling you had with them of why that was the person you chose to grow your baby. You chose to
Mhm.
trust them, and sometimes you have to really lean into that trust of this was a decision and I made it and I trust this decision.
I just think it's also important as a surrogate that you were being thoughtful and mindful of after an appointment, especially if they couldn't video or conference in or be there in person, that you are providing a timely update. Like
Oh,
ideally, in my opinion, like before you get on the road, just shoot them a quick text or give them a call, letting them know the outcome of that appointment. Because while it may have been a 5-10 minute little easygoing heartbeat, blood check, or blood pressure, pee in a cup situation, it's still important to them, and they want to know the outcome of what felt like a basic appointment to you.
yeah.
And so being mindful of the time that you're asking them to wait for that update is important,
Yeah.
and just something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, it happens to me all the time because I'll text
Mhm.
our surrogates on the morning of their appointments. Hey, I hope you have a great appointment. Let me know how it goes. And then every once in a while, a lot of times I won't hear back. And so then I'll send another text. Hey, how did it go? And they're like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot to update you. I updated the intended parents. Completely forgot about you. And I'm like, that's great. I am the
As long
last
as they
person.
have been done.
Yeah.
Yes.
As long as they have been updated, that's all that truly matters. And I'll just keep bugging you until you update me. So,
Exactly. And we do want to be updated. We also want to know you're okay. We also want to be able to track future appointments. That's another communication between you and the agency.
yes, absolutely. But it does, intended parents, it's very important to them. Sometimes they take off of work and they're just sitting there, waiting. So, keeping the time considerations. And actually, one more thing that I did want to add
Yeah.
is I think it can be really helpful for both parties to just, show a little bit of appreciation.
Mm.
I think that you can just tell each other thank you, like, hey, I see all that you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, surrogates can say, like, hey, I know this is really hard and I appreciate you being patient with me, or like whatever it is, just like show that
Love that.
appreciation for
That
each
goes
other.
a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it leads to, a lot of times surrogates are very thankful for the intended
Mhm.
parents that they have, or intended parents are very thankful for their surrogate. But it's kind of, when's the last time you said I love you type of thing,
Right.
No, tell them, like, say it out loud. Hey, I really appreciate what you're doing, or I really appreciate you going the extra mile to make sure that we can video in, or whatever. Just
Hmm.
giving that little bit of appreciation instead of only having it be transactional, unless that's something you agreed upon. That's a different story.
I mean, I feel like everybody has their different love languages, but there are certainly those who have the words of affirmation, and just maybe maybe that's the message. Like identify what your each party's love language is and how you can best fill their cup
Yeah,
to make sure that they're feeling seen. Ultimately, everybody just wants to be felt like they've been seen.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
how often do you feel comfortable checking in with your surrogate or your intended parents? What do you feel like is a comfortable balance?
Hmm. You go first.
Okay. I personally am a chatty person, so at minimum, it's once a week for me. Um,
Yeah.
but as the relationship progresses, and especially while pregnant, it's probably more often, at least based off my experience with my two intended parent couples. I feel like we were communicating pretty frequently,
Yeah.
mostly via text.
Yeah.
There were calls for sure, but I would say it was primarily text.
I was lucky enough to live locally, like the
Hmm.
same town as my intended parents. So we would like go to lunch and have family
Love
dinners
that.
and do stuff all the time. But regular communication, yeah, we were texting for sure once a week, probably every other day when I was pregnant.
Mhm.
but we also just like super got along. We
Yeah.
really enjoyed each other, and we would go meet and hang out and do stuff. And I didn't know them beforehand. We just really
Same.
like forged a friendship.
Mhm.
So, um,
I like, we would, when mine would come into town, or if I went to them like in the beginning before, for the transfer and those appointments, you know,
mhm.
we would also grab a bite before or after a set appointment. Or I had my son at that time, and we would, you know, do something, you know, related with him, like go to a museum or a park. You know, we would try to add an additional opportunity to spend time together. What it has been the hardest communication challenge in your journey? Is there anything you can think of that was a difficult communication challenge in your personal journey? And I can answer as well.
Yeah, I actually had to go to mediation during my journey. And so
Yeah.
that was, I think I've talked about this before, but
Mhm.
we just had a bit of a disagreement on the birthplace. And ultimately, it came back down to what was in my contract, and my contract did not fully protect me because I didn't understand it at the time.
Mm.
And that's fair. And we ended up birthing in a hospital, and it was great. We had a phenomenal birth, and our relationship was not impacted by this.
Mhm.
But it was very, very difficult in the moment. It was
Sure.
heightened emotions, and there was some fear mongering that was happening by a provider with my intended mother,
Mm.
and it was very hard. It was very, very difficult, but we pulled in our mental health professional, and we went to 2 mediation sessions, and it was great. Actually, it was very helpful for us.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's what those resources are absolutely for. And if we, the agency, can't help, there is another layer of help out there that can be brought in, and another layer. Like we will get to a solution. Is my
Yes.
the only thing that really comes to mind is in my second journey, there was something that I found after legal was already done in the contract that I think we just all missed in relation to giving birth to multiples. And it was really like important because I was pregnant with multiples. And I was like, oh my gosh, this didn't get changed for my first contract because he's the same attorney and
Mm.
whatever. Like it matched the singleton language. And I was like, this is not good. And no one realized it to the very, very end, like when everything was already signed. And so I was freaking out because I didn't know if I was being, I don't know, extra or like overcautious, and I didn't know if it would upset people if I brought it up because it's already been done. I didn't know how we could fix it or change it, but I also didn't feel like it was a good protection for me. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I went to the agency first, and then they're like, go speak to your attorney. And so then I talked to the attorney, and they were able to make an amendment. And my intended mom was like, oh my gosh, like, no big deal at all. I completely see your perspective and where you're coming from. It wasn't anything that we were like, it was an oversight by literally everyone. It wasn't something she intended for it to be in there either. And an amendment was done, and all was well. But
Which
I,
again, you could have totally jumped to the assumption of
oh
like
yeah, they
they
wanted
didn't
me.
want, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Of like soured your, but you approached it with open and honest communication, and it was fixed.
Exactly. How often do you see intended parents and surrogates continue the relationship post baby?
Oh
It's a
my
great
gosh,
one.
all
Yeah,
the time.
I
Yeah.
would say more often than not.
Yeah, absolutely. And to different degrees, like some
Yeah.
people check in yearly or every few months. I would also say this kind of ebbs and flows. Like
Mm-hmm.
should I call her my belly buddy, is 3. And there are times when I still talk to my intended mother, every other day, and we're like talking and having conversations. And then I think right now we haven't talked in several months, but that is no indication of my relationship with her. It's just life. She's a 3-year-old. So,
I
uh,
think that's where I would classify my two relationships with my intended parents as well. Like, I haven't talked to my best friend for life in months, not
yes.
because I don't love her to death, but it has been busy. And same thing with them. Like when, just a month ago, I had probably 2.5 hour conversation on the phone with my first intended mother, and we hadn't talked in months, but it picks right back up.
Yeah.
And then, on my birthday, and I think once we got moved here too, I had a FaceTime with the second intended parent. So I do attempt to try and see my intended parent families in person annually if it allows and we're in the right places at the right time. But I really feel like it is more people staying connected than not.
Yeah.
Which I love personally. But
Yeah, I do see that most. In fact, I don't know if I can think of maybe a couple, but nothing really that they didn't continue talking afterwards.
yeah,
Yeah. I think it's pretty common.
I agree. And again, it's one of those things that you just don't want to have too high of expectations for. I think people can go in and say like we have zero desire and that's fine, or the doors open if it allows and comes to that point of we want to have some form of relationship, but just don't make it too
A
concrete.
contract requirement.
Yeah. Like no one can guarantee your relationship and no one can guarantee the aftermath of it all. Just go in open and allow it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Have you ever leaned on your agency to help with communication and how did it go? And I think I've already kind of alluded to that. And Mariah, I don't think you had an agency on your journey, right?
I did not. I was
Yeah.
fully it and just a little wee baby surrogate who'd never done it before. So I was out there floating in the wild. Oh,
We want the agency. The agency is here to help you. And so we want to be there, a part of your communication, help make things flow better. If you feel like there's some kind of disconnect or it's not what you thought it was going to be or something's drastically changed, reach out. Let us help you navigate those waters to get you guys back on track.
yeah, absolutely. That's what we're here for. And, we want this journey to go well and smoothly and have a good relationship during and after. So,
Yeah. Communication, you're building trust, you're building respect, and it's a partnership and it goes both ways. And in any relationship, like I said, it's critical. It is absolutely critical, especially in a surrogacy relationship. And so navigating it and getting it kicked off right from the beginning is going to be pretty important.
yeah, I think, not not to be corny or cliche here, but truly it's a team and there's no I in team. You
Yeah.
really have to work together. You have to lean on each other. You have to support each other. And you have to be willing whenever you have frustrating moments to kind of put some emotions aside and work things through and see each other's perspectives and things like that.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to say thank you again for taking the time to join us and learn more about communication when it comes to the surrogacy journey. All right. Well, have a great night and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
All right.